This is one of over 500 assisted PNF stretching demonstrations that can be found as part of my 80 Days to Your Dream Body course, which is available to my channel members. If you'd like to see all of them, then consider becoming a member. But for right now, let's get our stretch on. And while we're resting, let's continue with our assisted PNF stretching demonstration at the glenohumeral joint. And now we're going to get a little bit more superficial, and we're going to emphasize the long head of the triceps brachii. The long head of the triceps brachii is the most central of the three triceps muscles, and it not only crosses the elbow joint posteriorly, but also the shoulder. So it's responsible for shoulder extension and elbow extension, meaning we want to take the patient into shoulder and elbow flexion. We're going to be working proximal to distal. So we're going to start at the shoulder, and we want the hand in a neutral position. We don't want forearm pronation or forearm supination, and we don't want any medial or lateral rotation. So the way that we would do this, we have a few different options with regard to the positioning. Position number one is we could just go ahead, take them into shoulder flexion, and then with the opposite arm, we could just use that to focus on the elbow flexion. I'm not a fan of this because they're going to be very unstable because they have no support at the back and they're going to be wobbling back and forth. So generally, I would not prefer to do this method. Another option is what you could do is you could go ahead and stabilize with your pelvis. So you could take your greater trochanter, your femur, sandwich it right up against the patient's scapula, and then this way you're free to traction with this arm, take them into shoulder flexion, and then we can take them into elbow flexion as well. For the purpose of the demonstration, I'm going to show you an alternate position. This is also another way where we can be at the head of the patient, but still stabilize at the scapula. And the way that we would perform it is we want the arm in somewhat of a straight position, and we're going to go underneath the patient. We're going to stabilize at the scapula. With this hand, we're going to be at the distal humerus. And then with what we would want to do in this position is we want to take them into shoulder extension or shoulder flexion. Then once we have a nice amount of shoulder flexion, we could then just go ahead and flex our own bicep and lean into it to get them into that shoulder elbow flexion. Once we feel a nice comfortable stretch, we would go work proximal to distal and isolate the PNF sequencing before we integrate them together. So first, I would instruct the patient to drive your elbow toward your hip. They would go into shoulder flexion, or shoulder extension. As they exhale and relax, I would traction to create some space, take them deep into shoulder flexion. And then I would instruct the patient to inhale and straighten out your elbow. They would inhale, go into elbow extension, and as they exhale and relax, I would traction to create some space and take them deep into elbow flexion. And then once we've isolated the movements, now it's time to integrate them together and combine them. So now I would instruct the patient to simultaneously bring your elbow toward your hip and straighten out your elbow. They would inhale and simultaneously go into shoulder and elbow extension. And as they exhale and relax, I would traction to create some space and simultaneously take them deep into shoulder and elbow flexion. When we are focusing on the long head of the triceps brachii group, we have two actions that are being involved. We're taking the patient into flexion of the shoulder and elbow. So at the shoulder joint, we're mainly going to be emphasizing, aside from the long head of the triceps brachii group, the latissimus dorsi and the posterior deltoid. With the latissimus dorsi at 0 degrees of flexion, we are going to be targeting the inferior fibers of the inferior portion of the latissimus dorsi. And then some other muscles that will be getting involved, we will be getting a little bit of the teres major, and we will be getting inadvertently the infraspinatus and the teres minor. The infraspinatus and teres minor are not shoulder extensors, they are lateral shoulder rotators. However, they do reside on the posterior shoulder complex, and because we're taking the patient into this position, we're indirectly targeting the posterior shoulder complex, so we're indirectly targeting the infraspinatus and teres minor. But in this position right over here, the main emphasis of what we're working on is going to be the long head of the triceps brachii group. And then during the next rest period, I'm going to show you guys a couple of different ways where we can emphasize both the medial and the lateral heads of the triceps brachii group. But for right now, our rest period is up. Time for set number 7. That was just a tiny taste of what can be found in my members only section. If you enjoyed it, become a member for only $5 a month to get access to hundreds of member only videos.